Welcome to Sam's Narration. Let's start with Chapter 4 Thoughts versus Thinking, Part 2. The moment we think about our thoughts is when we begin to get taken on an emotional roller coaster. When we think about our thoughts, we begin to judge and criticize the thoughts and experience all sorts of internal emotional turmoil. When I asked you how much you wanted to make, you had a thought about the amount. That thought was neutral and didn't cause any emotional toil. In fact, you might have felt expansive and excited. It was only when you began thinking about that thought of how much you wanted to make, which is what caused the self doubt, unworthiness, anxiety, anger, guilt, or any other emotion you may have experienced. This is what I mean by thinking is the root cause of all our suffering. Having the initial thought of how much you wanted to make didn't cause any suffering until you began thinking about the thought of how much you wanted to make. It is not necessary to think about our thoughts or to judge them. It does us no good to do so. We may think that thinking is helping us, but all it's really doing is causing us to feel all those negative, unwanted emotions and making us create reasons as to why we can't do it or why we shouldn't want it. The only thing that was helpful and useful was the initial thought that popped into your mind when I first asked how much you wanted to make. All of the thinking that happened after was destructive and unhelpful. Thoughts create, thinking destroys. The reason thinking destroys is because as soon as we begin to think about their thoughts, we cast our own limiting beliefs, judgments, criticism, programming, and conditioning onto the thought, thinking of infinite reasons as to why we can't do it and why we can't have it. Without thinking, we prevent all negative programming and judgments from tarnishing the initial thought of what you want to create. If I asked you, what are some ways you could make the amount of money you want? If you sat there long enough, you'll experience the same phenomena of having random thoughts pop into your head of ways you could make it happen. These are thoughts of creation. Thoughts are inherently infinite, expansive, and energetically positive. You'll know you are having thoughts from the divine when you feel positive emotions, feel lighter and alive. As soon as you begin thinking about those thoughts of the ways you can make the money you want, you'll immediately feel heavy, restricted, limited, along with a whole onslaught of negative emotions. This is how you'll know if you're thinking. I use my feelings as an internal radar that tells me whether I'm getting direct downloads of thoughts from the universe or if I'm in my head thinking about my thoughts. You can only feel what you are thinking. So, feelings and emotions are like an intuitive internal dashboard which tells me if I'm thinking too much or not. If I'm having a lot of negative emotions, I know that I'm thinking too much. This is another example of how we are naturally built for success. Below is a chart that compares thinking versus thoughts to help you identify which one is which within your mind. Thoughts versus thinking chart. So there are three columns we can see over here. First is source, second is universe, and third is ego. Let's start with the first one, which is weight. For universe, it's light. With ego, it's heavy. The source of energy. For universe, it's expansive. With ego, it's always restrictive. The source of nature. For universe, it's infinite. With ego, it's limited. Source of quality. For universe, it's always creative. With ego, it's destructive. Source of charge. For universe, it's positive. With ego, it's negative. Source of essence. For universe, it's divine. With ego, it's mortal. Source of feeling. For universe, it's alive. With ego, it's stressful. Source of emotion. For universe is love. With ego, it's fear. Source of belief. For universe, we have infinite possibilities. With ego, it's confining. Source of sense. For universe, it's wholeness. Source of sense. With ego, it's always separateness. Source of effort. For universe, it's effortless. With ego, it's laborious. With this, we are at the end of chapter 4. We'll meet soon with chapter 5 in our next session. Till then, take care. Bye bye.